What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about why Europe doesn't build skyscrapers. Is that true? Because here in the United States, skyscrapers and, big, tall, massive buildings are very common and very, very popular in our major cities. And they're sort of seen as this, I don't know, kind of symbol of wealth and power, I guess you could say, which honestly is pretty important things in American culture. So honestly, I was a bit surprised to see this video by the B1M, which actually says that skyscrapers aren't really found in Europe. So today, I want to learn more about this and why this is. So let's take a look.
Why aren't there many skyscrapers in Europe?
Oh, wow.
Despite being one of the most developed, densely populated, and economically prosperous continents, Europe has surprisingly few skyscrapers.
Oh my God. For one thing, can we just take a moment to acknowledge how freaking beautiful? I don't know where these places are in Europe exactly, but it's beautiful. And if you look around, you can plainly see there's some impressive buildings, but there's really impressive architecture, actually. So the kind of stuff you never see here in the US, but there's one thing that's missing. Buildings that go up into the sky, and that's something that here in the United States, I think I don't know, it's kind of this image of the modern city, or the futuristic, or I don't know, but looking at this, I can actually see it's not really necessary to create a beautiful city. As a matter of fact, I kind of like how these look. But I don't know, it's just completely different. It's hard to even compare.
Particularly when compared to Asia and North America.
Yeah. This is what I am used to. This. This is normal to me. And it's it looks modern. It looks clean with sharp edges, and I don't know, that's a totally different aesthetic to this. Very different. Huh. But anyway, the practical purpose of a tall building is obviously for, I don't know, businesses, and to hold lots of people and take up lots of space, and you can do lots of stuff. So it's not just a visual thing. It has a practical purpose as well. But I don't know. If you look at some of these European cities, you can already say it would look really, really out of place for a skyscraper to be in these cities. It would look wrong in a way. So maybe it makes sense.
Of the 218 skyscrapers constructed on the continent to date, 66% of them are located in just 5 cities.
Wow.
London, Paris, Frankfurt, Moscow, and Istanbul.
Wow. Okay, so there are some skyscrapers in Europe, they mentioned Paris and London and stuff. So there are big buildings in Europe. It just seems more so here in the United States.
So why have other major European cities not embraced the skyscraper? How do they thrive without the significant inner urban space and floor areas that these clever structures provide?
Yeah.
And is everything about to change in our increasingly urbanized world?
I don't know how I feel about that, because this is beautiful. This, I don't want it to change. I know it's not my place to say what Europe should or shouldn't do, or whatever city this is, but I hope it never gets a random rectangular skyscraper. Like that would kind of ruin the skyline because this is beautiful in its own way, but yeah, why Europe doesn't build skyscrapers?
When skyscrapers first rose to prominence in the 19th century, first in Chicago and later in New York, many European cities were already firmly established, with grand historic
Mm,
buildings and public spaces that left little room for large new structures.
that makes sense. Well, makes sense when you hear it like that. Literally history, like just the way things shook out. Like in a lot of Europe has a lot longer, deeper history, and you guys have all these cool buildings and all the amazing old architecture, and it's something we don't have here. So I guess a lot of our buildings and a lot of our American cities are more modern or newer, um, which isn't necessarily better just like looking at them, but it does explain why the majority of our buildings seem to be more modern. They were literally made like more recently.
Most of Europe's cities around that time were also more evenly zoned, and were not
Hmm.
facing the high demand for floor space in key districts that typically drives high rise development.
Sure. So European cities are just designed better? Because one of the reasons for a skyscraper or a big building is to utilize like three-dimensional space. Like you're running out of room in the city, so you go up into the air and create space. And I guess in a lot of our cities, maybe they're so jam-packed, so populated, or perhaps not designed that well that it necessitates these massive structures.
Additionally, as the power and influence of North America
Hmm.
began to grow, a cultural rivalry emerged between Americans who saw Europe's class system as outdated and Europeans who saw some American ideals as eroding traditions and the European way of life.
Sure, sure,
As
sure.
a result, each continent became wary of adopting the other's concepts.
Really? That has something to do with it? Like skyscrapers, these big kind of sterile looking buildings, um, kind of became associated with American culture? Is that a thing? Like I mean, I certainly visualize that when I think of an American city. So some of it is literally that Europe doesn't want to necessarily look like the United States or doesn't care to adopt any sort of design philosophies that we have. You guys have your own way of doing things. So that's actually a part of it.
While North America aims to become the model for a new age, Europe sought to preserve its heritage.
Sure, 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 sure.
While this
Yeah, here in the like we don't have much heritage to preserve here in the US, which can be freeing in a way because we just kind of we're a relatively new country, like hundreds of years old at this point, but relatively new, and there's no precedent, there's no yeah, whereas in Europe you guys have like this long deep culture and all the different countries and sort of preset ways and traditions of doing things that you want to, honor.
While this explains why skyscraper construction didn't initially catch on in Europe, it doesn't explain what has held the continent back since.
Huh. Post-war rebuild.
In the wake of the Second World War, many thought European cities would modernize and replicate the skyscrapers that were rising across North America.
Sure.
However, in Western Europe, where many cities lost landmark and historic structures, an overwhelming desire to restore what had been destroyed took hold.
That's really interesting because it could have gone two ways, right? So this post-World War II, a lot of buildings, a lot of cities destroyed, damaged in the wake of the war, and a lot of European cities had a decision to make whether to rebuild what was once there or to build something new. Um, and I actually really respect the decision to restore what was there. Because, I mean, I don't know. There's something just deeply respectable about respecting your heritage like that. That's really cool. But that would honestly be the more difficult route, right?
In addition, the lower population of Europe at that time meant that the demand for floor area that principally drives skyscraper construction wasn't there. As a result,
Okay.
modest structures replaced buildings that could not be saved or restored.
Okay.
Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, the expanding Soviet Union's rebuild effort consisted largely of mid-rise repetitive structures that sought to rehouse much of the population.
Okay.
It was
So there are parts of Europe, or maybe they're talking about Russia, Soviet Union, that went with kind of in between, like these low, modern buildings.
It was during this time that Europe saw its first skyscrapers begin to rise, not in response to growth and prosperity, but in an effort by
Whoa.
the Soviets to indicate their power and influence.
This is an interesting skyscraper, because it doesn't look like the skyscraper I'm used to. The one in the back does. This is like a skyscraper with like a meant to look old. Brusselization.
While Brussels has never constructed a true skyscraper, it is partly responsible for the lack of skyscrapers across the continent.
Now, just looking at this almost looks like a mixture of older and new buildings, kind of like a hybrid. Like you just see a bunch of both, which makes a lot of sense to me. I would actually think like a lot of European cities would go this route, where you try to preserve as much of the old structures as you can, as if it's practical, and then incorporate newer modern structures, and you kind of end up with a bit of both.
Without any significant zoning regulations in place, the 1960s saw many buildings in the city demolished to make way for large, modern structures that
Oh,
had little
wow.
regard for architectural or cultural value.
Mmm.
Recognizing the damage this indiscriminate redevelopment was doing to the city,
Yeah, you kind of end up with this, where you get random, beautiful, like towers and cathedrals, like within a modern city. Um, I don't know. It's kind of sad in a way, but it's also like you have to balance respecting history with like being practical. Like, I don't know. That's a tough balance. It's something we don't really have to worry about here in the United States because we don't have much history. We don't have old buildings we're worried about preserving, really. Um, but I imagine this is kind of a problem in Europe.
many prominent figures and architects coined the term Brusselization and lobbied to introduce new planning laws.
Okay.
These regulations significantly limited the scale of new buildings and required historic facades to be restored and incorporated into new developments,
Oh,
preserving the
wow.
cultural fabric of the city.
Okay. I like that it sounds like a lot of Europe is very, very passionate about preserving the old buildings and the heritage. I really like that.
The row in Brussels led to a general dislike for modern buildings across Europe, with many seeing them as bland or soulless.
Oh, except Brussels, which, yeah, I mean, so this is considered ugly and bland, sorta? Because this is like, this could be any American city. Like this could be anywhere in the U.S. Looks just like this.
In response, numerous cities adopted similar regulations and set aside controlled districts like
Oh, this is Paris. Paris is pretty modern looking. Well, actually, I'm seeing like some old, some new. Actually, a lot of in the back there, like all those skyscrapers. That's clearly like very, very modern looking. And yeah, like objectively speaking, it's just not as beautiful as the old buildings. Like it's cool, and it's like it shows like what modern man is capable of, and that's amazing, and they're gigantic, but I can see why Europe is really focused on preserving the old stuff, because, yeah, I mean, at its core, it's beautiful, but it has a lot of like deep meaning and history.
Paris's La Défense, to keep high-rise development away from historic centres.
Huh. The urban age. Oh, yes.
By the start of the 21st century, attitudes around tall buildings were softening across the continent.
Yeah, it's clear that there are skyscrapers in Europe. They don't exist. Um, but it does look out of place in a bit in Europe.
As architectural trends moved away from box-like structures towards more unique designs, and as the world became
Right.
increasingly globalized.
Yeah, this kind of thing where buildings have like slants and asymmetrical designs, and this is like the new age stuff. The massive buildings that like have to be a work of art too.
Since the early 2000s, major financial centres like London, Paris, Moscow, Istanbul, and Frankfurt have seen several skyscrapers rise.
Look at this. That's so interesting. Like the modern buildings on the left, and then the one on the right, which is clearly like this ancient old tower or something. It's very interesting.
As demand for commercial space in their centres has increased. By contrast, smaller European cities that have been experiencing more modest growth have turned their focus to the environment and improving living standards for citizens.
Oh my god, look at this thing. That's cool. How do you take care of all those bushes on the building? Well, it looks cool, but
In recent years, urban areas in Scandinavia and Central Europe have consistently ranked among the highest in the world for sustainability, happiness, and well-being.
wow, like this right here. We don't have anything like this. Never lose this. This is beautiful. But yeah, it's obvious like even Europe is like embracing modernization to a large extent. Like there's no getting around it. Like there's just so many benefits to having modern buildings, modern amenities and plumbing and like electricity, internet, like so much stuff, and elevators, and it goes on, but so it's hard to like, I don't know, it's a balance, like I said, of preserving the old but also like utilizing the modern stuff because it is very useful.
while maintaining importance within their national economies. However, skyscraper construction in the cities of today is no longer driven purely by economic growth or the need for commercial office space.
Okay.
With 60% of the global human population set to be living in urban areas by 2030,
Wow.
residential skyscrapers are now rising in prominence, particularly across
Oh,
Asia and North America.
sure. Sure, skyscrapers, not usually that's associated with like companies and businesses, but now it's like in cities just so people can live in the skyscraper.
As many traditional rural-based industries become automated, millions are migrating into cities and major urban areas,
Sure.
driving significant demand for residential space that is often met with high-rise structures. Europe.
You can't escape it. You can't escape it. Yeah. Because, like, especially as the population grows of the Earth, although I think that's actually starting to slow down. But anyway, people want to live in cities, and cities only have so much space, so you have no choice but to go up into the sky.
Europe is not immune to this phenomenon, particularly in such a
Wow.
heavily globalized world.
Interesting. At least you guys have really interesting designs for your skyscrapers. These are some really interesting skyscrapers, like the modern ones here. I don't know what European city this is, but yeah, for being like modern and new, these are actually really cool looking. So that's nice.
And with the continent's desire to keep up with the progress and economic growth of China and the US. As such, Europe could witness a skyscraper boom in the decades ahead.
Oh my, so even Europe might not escape the skyscraper phenomenon. It just makes too much sense. It's too useful. But I'm sure Europe will preserve like a lot of this cool architecture that makes Europe Europe.
However, with
Ha!
entire urban centres now being declared historically significant,
That's
and with
cool.
the desire to retain as much culture and architecture as possible rightly holding strong up to the present day, the unique challenge facing future skyscraper construction in Europe is all to do with the past.
Wow.
If you enjoyed this video and would like to get
Okay. So that's the end. Again, this was by B1M. Really cool. Really cool look into like European cities, which I haven't seen much of, and uh this video was about how Europe doesn't build skyscrapers, but it actually, like, when you watch the whole thing, it actually sounds like Europe has been holding out and is starting to have to build skyscrapers to accommodate, like, people. Like, it's kind of inevitable. It's kind of sad because after seeing a lot of these European cities, like, you guys have something really beautiful and special that we just don't have here in the US. So we don't even have to really worry about showing restraint. Like, we've just totally embraced skyscrapers and these sort of boring big rectangle buildings everywhere. And it seems like obviously those are in Europe too, but you guys like are kind of trying to find this balance of like respecting the old and, well, embracing the new. And it's really interesting discussion and a really interesting sort of problem to have. But it seems like Europe's doing like a really good job of balancing it, but I guess we'll see what happens. This was very interesting, actually. Very interesting. Something that I've never really thought about. So, anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on skyscrapers in Europe, if it's good or bad or what's going to happen. Or if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to European things that I've never seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.